clearly been a strong effort between the European Union, the UK, and the US to tighten the enforcement of a lot of the existing sanctions, as well as plugging some holes in the structure of sanctions. And this will probably tighten the impact on the Russian economy. There's been some concern in the West that sanctions thus far have not had enough short-term effect, although most experts are pretty confident that the long-term effect is going to be quite considerable, because Russia is not getting capital and technology, financial capital and technology it needs for its industry and other parts of the economy to prosper. And this is lowering productivity in the Russian economy, and this will play out over a period of years, but it's going to have a huge impact on Russia's economy.
Biden has called President Putin, I think it's late enough to say this now, a crazy son of a bitch, prompting not just an angry response from the Kremlin, but the Russian president's claim that that's the reason why he prefers the Democrat over Donald Trump as US president. The row started after Biden made his remarks during a fundraising event in San Francisco yesterday evening, as he discussed the risk of a nuclear conflict amid the Russian war with Ukraine. So let's talk to William Courtney, former special assistant to the president for Russia, Ukraine and Eurasia, and now senior fellow at the RAND think tank. Hello and welcome back, William.
Yes, Henry, hello.
Hello. So, okay, let's deal with President Biden. He's being accused by the Kremlin of acting or appearing like a Hollywood cowboy. Now, is this a bit of madman strategy? Was this accident, or was it designed by Mr. Biden?
Well, this is probably something that was an off-the-cuff remark that President Biden made. But the accusation from the Kremlin really doesn't seem to be very believable. There was a time when Ronald Reagan became president that the Soviet Union, Soviet leaders charged him with being a cowboy or even a nuclear cowboy. And of course, Ronald Reagan played a cowboy in movies. But no one here would think that President Biden was a cowboy.
What do you think the impact of Mr. Biden's comment really might be in Russia? And then I want to ask you what the US public might think of it. But in Russia, what do you think they really make of it?
I don't think it will have any importance in terms of U.S. reputation or the state of U.S.-Russian relations. I think it's pretty much of a trivial matter.
And what about among the great American public? Because, they like the folksiness of a U.S. president. That's one of the reasons why they quite liked George W. Bush. They saw he was a guy that they could have a beer with, where they saw President Obama, who's far less folksy, as more aloof. Is that the kind of thing that would go down with people who think, Joe Biden, not really sure? Might they think, hey, he's still got it in him?
Very few Americans will ever pay attention to this in the media. And certainly, if Americans do focus on it, they will think that this is a lot, maybe too mild, because Biden and others have portrayed President Putin in sharper terms. I mean, he is, after all, a war criminal from the International Criminal Court. So a crazy SOB is not something that will have an impression in the U.S.
All right, let's focus on the more serious aspect of all of this. Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We are fast approaching the second anniversary, and the UK has announced 50 more sanctions on various entities in Russia and, proxies for Russian trade. And of course, the EU is doing the same with Chinese and Indian companies. What about the US? What do you think they're going to do?
So the U.S. has already announced that there are going to be new sanctions tomorrow, Friday. Some U.S. officials say there are going to be hundreds and hundreds of sanctions. So we'll have to wait and see what they are. But there has clearly been a strong effort between the European Union, the UK, and the U.S. To tighten the enforcement of a lot of the existing sanctions, as well as plugging some holes in the structure of sanctions. And this will probably tighten the impact on the Russian economy. There's been some concern in the West that sanctions thus far have not had enough short-term effect, although most experts are pretty confident that the long-term effect is going to be quite considerable because Russia is not getting capital and technology, now financial capital and technology it needs for its industry and other parts of the economy to prosper. And this is lowering productivity in the Russian economy. And this will play out over a period of years, but it's going to have a huge impact on Russia's economy.
It might have an impact on Russia's economy long term, but something that would have a great impact on the Ukrainian war effort in the short term would be if the huge package of defense and funding that's destined for Ukraine were unblocked by House Republicans. But there's no sign of that changing anytime soon, is there?
There seems to be increasing optimism that this is going to get done.
Really? How come?
For the optimism is that the European Union was also stymied by Viktor Orban's blockage, but finally the European Union went ahead with its $50 billion. So what we're likely to see in our Congress is, for example, in the House, the lower house, the lower chamber of our Congress, the House, most of the Democrats and probably half the Republicans would support the aid if the vote came to the floor. So that would be a large majority. The key issue is having the bill come to the floor, which Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has hesitated on thus far. But one way or another, there's likely to be a way for the vote to come to the floor, hopefully sooner. But if it takes a little longer, there's something called a discharge petition, and that discharge petition can take a few weeks, but that would be a way to enable the vote to take place for sure.
And quick final thought on sanctions. Paul in Oxford messaged us earlier, and he was asking me to find out what sanctions against the 6 Russian prison officers who oversaw the death of Alexei Navalny. What do those sanctions mean? What assets can we sanction? And do they have assets in the UK, or is it just a travel ban? And he felt it was hopelessly limited. Just briefly, when we do sanction individuals in this way, what does it effectively mean? Doesn't it only matter if they are coming to the UK or have assets in the UK or the US?
These sanctions on these prison officials are likely mostly symbolic. They may have some assets in Europe someplace, maybe less likely the United States. But these prison officials, these are not top people in the government. They're much further down. So I think it's mostly symbolic. The main impact of the Navalny killing on sanctions is going to be the overall impact it has on causing the U.S. to expand further the sanctions package. And I would not be surprised if what is announced tomorrow actually is an expansion of what had been planned maybe a week or two ago.
All right, William Courtney, former Special Assistant to the President for Russia, Ukraine and Eurasia, now Senior Fellow at the RAND think tank. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio Election Station.